Welcome back to today's episode. We're here to talk about Presumed Innocent, the new TV series on Apple TV Plus starring Jake Gyllenhaal, created by David E. Kelley, and based on the book by Scott Turow in the 80s. Also sort of the movie from Harrison Ford did in the 90s, right? You've read the book, you watched the movie, and you watched the first 2 episodes. When it comes down to your favorite adaptation so far, which is better, the book, the movie, or the television show?
For this, it's the book.
The book is the best.
Yes, the book, because you get a lot more detail. You're following like a sociopath almost, or borderline sociopath.
Assistant DA is a sociopath.
Rusty, I would say so. And I was really glad they picked Jake Gyllenhaal for the role because we've seen him
he is a sociopath.
Well, we've seen him play it so many times in things like Donnie Darko, Nightcrawler. Even Zodiac.
He does
Enemy.
keep his cool. More so than a lot of other actors. And I can understand why they would think like an updated version of a Harrison Ford type character, because when I watched the movie, I did find it kind of funny how like he never really gets super angry or animated.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about Jake Gyllenhaal. Even though he might not be in amazing movies, I don't think I've ever seen him and thought that he's given a bad performance. And I don't know if he's done a lot of TV shows. This seemed like kind of the first one that I could remember.
As we know, Apple TV likes to pull in the big actors from movies and stuff. Chris Evans, this show reminded me the most of Defending Jacob, because it also dealt with him being a district attorney or an assistant district attorney. His son gets accused of murder, and then he has to push himself away from the case because he didn't want it to be a conflict of interest. And then he had to watch this whole proceeding go down. And we as an audience don't know whether his kid committed any sort of crime.
Just like in the book, we don't know if Rusty has committed the crime. We're not sure if we're dealing with an unreliable narrator. We're not sure if he's just leaving stuff out of the story, but it is written from first person.
Yes. So Rusty is this assistant DA.
Rosette Sabich.
He's got a friend who is the actual DA, right?
Raymond Horgan.
Who is running for re-election. Right?
Yep.
And then one of their colleagues, this Carolyn lady, who
Rusty was partnered
who was not only partnered with, but had an affair with, right? Ends up dead. Then he leads the investigation on her murder, right?
Well, there's a thing to that. Raymond Horgan could not give it over to Tommy Malto or Nico de la Guardia because Nico de la Guardia is running against him for his spot. And so he knows if he gives it over to them two, they're not going to do anything about it.
And those are just kind of competitor, like rivals.
Right. And so
other attorneys, yes.
So he goes, Rusty, you have to kind of take the case for this. I'm giving this to you. We need a win because my the voting is almost up.
Now, is that the way that it's presented in the book, or is that the way it's presented in the TV show? Because from the limited amount that I saw in the TV show, you saw the whole thing, but the limited amount that I remember, I thought that Rusty came in there and was like, I want to take this case. Did he not do that?
No, I think in the book, in the movie, and in the TV series, he's very hesitant because he knows that there's a chance that if he does, it's going to be released to the public that he was having an affair with Carol.
Well, one change I do know that they made was instead of just showing him pictures of the body, he actually goes to the crime scene in the television show.
That was very
different. We see her body. It seems weird that you would have an attorney go to like a police crime scene. It's like we're starting to see in television shows a lot of people who aren't specifically police officers and detectives showing up at crime scenes, because Elsbeth was like, what was she? I forgot her title, but she was there to keep the police in check. She wasn't. She was also an attorney, but it seems like anybody who has the right credentials can just walk in there and look at a dead body. If you so want to.
After the prologue, I believe that the book starts out at Carolyn's funeral. And here they decided to change it where instead of him already knowing about Carolyn dying, we see him get the phone call.
True. And Fool Me Once started with a funeral scene where the main character, who we don't know how culpable or whether or not she's done anything bad, is seeing that her husband has died.
And
it's also a legal thriller.
Yeah, and you're also supposed to wonder if she's borderline crazy, right?
Basically, what I'm getting at is David E. Kelley, who is known for doing this type of show. He's known for doing legal, usually more comedy related?
Well, all comedy from what I saw, because I watched a lot of pilots from him. Boston Legal, Ally McBeal, even something that was short-lived like Snopes, or even LA Law, which was pretty campy back in the 80s and 90s. They all, even Love and Death, had some comedic undertone to it. Maybe not full-out comedies all the time, but definitely there was a lot of humor
You had a
placed
lot of snarky characters.
in the situations,
Yeah,
yes.
Alan Sharp or whatever his name was, the James Spader character, and then also obviously what's his face, William Shatner.
Yeah.
I know Big Sky when we did that was less comedic, and I know that recently that Jeff Daniels one. I don't know. Jeff Daniels has done comedy before, obviously.
But I guess
It does lead me to a game though. It's called 90s Called because obviously the movie came out in the 90s, and I wanted to see which one of these facts you would be able to choose as fiction.
Okay.
All right. So Harrison Ford's haircut in the movie was a distinct decision to make him less likable.
Less likable.
Now, if you remember, because in Star Wars and like Indiana Jones and stuff, he kind of had like a
He does.
cool
He has
man's
long
haircut.
Yeah.
And then in this, it's kind of just like cut like in sort of a loserish way.
Well, I guess yeah. Rusty is not in the book, and the film follows it way more closely than the TV show does.
That's a good point.
But
yes.
in the book, he's not supposed to be at that redeemable. Like he's cheating on his wife and everything. So I could believe that.
David E. Kelley's Ally McBeal and The Practice won Outstanding Drama Series and Outstanding Comedy Series in 1999. The reason I say this one is because you just brought up the fact that he didn't do a lot of dramas, but he did win for both categories if this fact is true.
Well, I know that I saw the first episode of The Practice. That was actually the show that Boston Legal was a spinoff to, right?
Yes.
I would say, yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Okay. And then in the same year, 1999, Jake Gyllenhaal starred in two of his most famous movies, Donnie Darko and Bubble Boy.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say October Sky.
Bubble Boy is more of a joke. He was in that, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I would say that one I think is false, but I'm not 100% sure.
Why do you think that's false?
It just it seems like the other two are so correct, and I'm not sure about Jake Gyllenhaal's career back in the 90s.
Also in 1999, Scott Turow, the author of Presumed Innocent, he came out with a bunch of legal thrillers throughout that decade. And Personal Injuries was actually named by Time the best fiction novel of the year. So you basically have three 1999 facts that you have to choose from, or you can choose Ford's haircut.
I think that's the Jake Gyllenhaal one.
Yes,
that's false.
those both came out in 2001.
Okay, yeah.
Now, yeah, I do believe October Sky was a couple years earlier than that. So I think he went October Sky and then Donnie Darko, Bubble Boy.
But like his prime time,
Zodiac.
like when he was starring in a lot of stuff, that was really the 2000s era, right?
No, I think he's done a lot in the last 10 years. I mean, from Prisoners and what was that one with Michael Pena, the cop
End
one
of
that
Watch.
he did? End of Watch, yeah. And then he's done a bunch of like kind of cheesy one-offs now, Ambulance, The Guilty, Roadhouse. So yeah, his career has been quite busy.
It's a good return to form for him because
Why is it a return to form?
Because I feel like he is a sociopath.
Oh, and Nightcrawler, right?
Yes, well, I even had Nightcrawler here as one of the things that I compared it to, but also The Guilty. He's always playing some type of damaged character.
Yeah, and so they're in Chicago, right? Because the way that Scott Turow writes all his books is he puts it in the place of Kendall County, which isn't a real county, but people presume that it's based on Cook County, which is one of the most famous places in Chicago.
So he puts all his books,
all his characters and stuff in the fictional universe. It's the same thing that Stephen King does with it wherever he does his horror stories.
Has he ever had crossovers before?
I don't know. I haven't read his books. You've read one now. If you read another one and you find out, that'd be interesting.
But it takes place in Illinois because it's Illinois versus Rusty.
Yes,
Sabich.
Chicago, and that brings me to a second game that I have. You see, Apple has shown a proclivity for loving Chicago, and we've talked about this in the past. But the most recent we had was Dark Matter. Before that, it was obviously like Shining Girls and stuff like that. But Cook County is pretty damn famous in and of itself. And here are 4 facts about it, one of which is not true. Ready?
Yeah.
In Cook County, it's illegal to eat in a place that's currently on fire.
I mean, that sounds true. Yeah.
Does it sound true? Okay. For the 4th year in a row, Chicago is America's most corrupt city, and Illinois is the 3rd most corrupt state, according to a new report from the University of Illinois at Chicago. 4 years in a row.
I mean, it seems like from the way that it's portrayed on TV all the time, even the bear takes place in Chicago. That sounds very realistic and true.
So you're saying because they show it so much that it must be crime
Well, it's
ridden
just
and corrupt?
I know that there is a lot of crime in Chicago, or at least that's what I heard. I remember in the 2000s that
It's
was
got
like
a
a
certain
big thing.
stereotype with it.
Yes,
But
right.
you actually think 4 years in a row it is the most corrupt city in America.
I mean,
That's
I need to hear the other ones.
okay. Tales of Redemption is a program that is in Cook County where the incarcerated are able to train rescue dogs.
Didn't you say is Cook County where this takes place?
Yes, Cook County, Chicago. This is what we're talking about.
But didn't you say that didn't you say it's not real?
No, Kendall County.
Kendall County. Okay.
Kendall County is based off Cook County.
Okay, and what's the last one?
The last one was David E. Kelley was actually born there.
Oh, interesting. You know, I could definitely say. So I'll say it's the third one. It's
The
third
one about Tales of Redemption?
Yeah.
No, that's actually true, and it's like the most happy fact of all of these. Yeah, they train rescue dogs and stuff. I think that's a great idea for prisons, as long as like the inmates are into it. Like,
so which
that's
one's
cool.
the fake one?
All right, so it wasn't David E. Kelley who was born there. It was actually Harrison Ford.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
which makes his casting even better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you watch the movie, you watch these first 2 episodes. Tell me about the changes from the book to the television series.
There's a lot of them. So in the book, he has an 8-year-old, and again, I'm gonna mostly compare it to the book because the film is pretty faithful to it anyway. So you can basically be assured anything I say in the book is the way it is in the film, like this. And he has an 8-year-old son named Nat.
You just said okay, yeah.
And in the TV series, not only did they age up one of his kids, Nat doesn't exist. He actually has 2 kids, and their names are Jaden, who is his daughter, and Kyle, who is his son. And I think they're both in high school at the time. Also, Raymond Horgan is portrayed as a good guy in this TV series. So in the book, you know that he kind of betrays.
The DA?
Yes, he betrays Rusty kind of midway through the book, but here he actually is Rusty's lawyer because Rusty
could still betray him technically.
He's being accused, yeah, but it was a big shock by the end of episode 2 to see Raymond Horgan being his lawyer because Stern in the book is his lawyer, and we really get to know a lot about Stern. So I'm hoping that they don't just like try to
collapse the
combine
characters
2
into one. Yeah, but it's also interesting because I think the dynamic of having the district attorney who is like so pressured with his election, and though he at one time had favor for Rusty, decides, oh, I'm going to cut that strand and not even fall down that well, you know?
Right.
In fact, I'm going to try to push for him to be, what's the word, criminalized or convicted, right? And because it was his testimony that was really going to damn him. And instead decide I'm going to defend this guy, making it almost impossible for him to testify, or I don't know. It would be weird if the prosecuting side of things, which is the competitor rivalry, the other DA runners,
it's Tommy Malto and Nico
if they then
DeLaGuardia.
called the lawyer to the stand. You know, that'd be weird.
Well, I'm also interested to see how the testimony scenes play out from the book.
So you haven't seen them yet?
No.
At this point, Rusty has been people have figured out because of the evidence that he may have committed this murder, and so he's been brought to the courtroom, but they haven't actually gone through the motions yet.
Yes, and he's been accused of the crime. That's kind of the ending to the first episode, and here they're just setting a date for it. Also, I felt like the show did not do at least as much representation of Rusty being as obsessed with Carolyn that he is. I actually even got this quote from the book itself just to show you how crazy he was about her, because it was like every single second he just couldn't get his mind off of her. And we see instances of it in the show, but not as much as like here. This incredible domination of my feelings. I get in the shower, I drive down the street, it's Carolyn. Fantasies, conversations with her, an uninterrupted movie. I see her full of relaxed amusement and appreciation of me. I can't finish a phone call. I can't read a prosecution memo of a brief. Like
it's definitely like a Dexter monologue, right? Where he's like going kind of fascinating into a person, usually someone he's going to kill.
And that's not a bad comparison. And in the TV show, yeah, we get quick instances of flashes of Carolyn. In fact, I was glad that they didn't do what the book and the TV show did, where they just decided to give you full scenes of the 2 of them. I thought that it was a fine representation, but it didn't go as in depth.
Well, it sounds like it did what the Lizzie Kaplan and Joshua Jackson series did. The femme fatale, based on the movie,
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction, right? Where it showed the present, but then the backflashes of their relationship as it began, and then as it cascaded forward, like and how she ended up being dead by the end. Like
And
Is it like that? Is my question.
I mean, I guess a little bit. It's not as it's just again not as in depth as I feel like the film or the book got. And so also even things like
That's
Bunny
weird.
Davis's story.
You're saying the film was more in depth than this elongated TV show.
Yeah, no, I know it's supposed to be 8 episodes, but it feels like we're 25% of the way through the story. But honestly, the film, which was only 2 hours, it seems like that was perfectly fine. It is a little bit of a question mark to me why this got greenlit, not because of the casting being bad, and not because David E. Kelley hasn't done good shows before, but why they felt the need to tell this story anyways. Because there's just things that don't make sense. Like I mentioned about before, Jaden and Kyle, right? They are
The two kids.
Yeah, yeah.
They're there to humanize him.
Well, they're there to humanize him, but first off, I think an 8-year-old humanizes the main character way more because you get the innocence factor, and even in the book, you see how he's struggling to tell things to Nat because Nat might not explain the full
It's
thing.
harder to raise teens, and maybe it's easier to believe that he may have snapped
But that's the
because
thing.
he was raising teens.
That's the thing about the TV series, though, is that even though they are high school age, the show treats them as younger than they are.
Oh, that's
They
fine.
perform TikTok dances in the
Oh, high
beginning of
schoolers do
episode 2.
TikTok?
Rusty plays catch with Kyle like he's 8 years old, and he's in the full get-up guard as well, with the mask and the vest and everything. And at one point, Rusty says he'll make pancakes to Kyle at like 6 o'clock in the morning, like he's 5 years old. It didn't seem like
I
they
think
were
a
actually
parent
playing
can
their
make
age.
pancakes for their kids as long as the kids are receptive towards it.
He wasn't receptive towards it.
Oh, okay.
Kyle was mad about it. He's like, no, I don't want pancakes. And then that's when they get their house searched to see if there's any evidence.
Yeah, maybe if he's using the pancakes as like a defense mechanism to try to like veer the kids away from realizing that he's under suspicion for murder.
Well, yeah, that's what he was initially trying to do. But
So
it
I
didn't
think a
do
kid
much.
would pick up on that and probably be like, screw you, dad, no.
And Bunny Davis's storyline. So when Carolyn gets murdered, she's also tied up. I believe it's that way in the book. But there was a different murderer who killed this woman named Bunny Davis. And this is
Are they combining murders?
Well, they went to the murderer who killed her and were trying to figure out if there was anything that he had to do with this.
Oh.
But that is not in the
So
book
they added scenes.
at all. Yeah, and it was strange because it started out the same way the prologue does, where Rusty Sabich, he's in court, even down to him pointing his finger. I really liked the first scene, even though it was only a minute, because it was straight out of the book. He even says lines that are straight from the book. But then you realize it all has to do with this Bunny Davis storyline, and the book and the movie all have enough suspects. It all has enough mystery
Right.
that I didn't feel like they needed to add this extra layer of, oh, does this person have something to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, you're supposed to suspect the prosecuting attorney. You're supposed to suspect the judge. You're supposed to suspect the jury. Like,
Yeah, and
not the jury.
maybe
but
not
yeah.
the jury, but and I don't think it's that much of a spoiler in the book at least. Carolyn, it's not just Rusty that she has an affair with, and I think that the movie did a better job casting because whenever I was reading about her, I envisioned someone who was cast in the movie like Carolyn rather than the TV show was. But Carolyn is having sex with everybody.
Yeah.
like in the
Yeah.
book.
It took me reading because I had seen the movie, but it took me reading until I realized that was very true. I can't say anything more.
Yeah, it's just not Rusty like at least it's portrayed in the first 2 episodes.
Now, wouldn't it be interesting if she was still doing that here because of some of the switches in casting? You know? Okay, I'm just gonna come out and say it. Like, she was having sex with the judge, right?
Yeah, yes. she
So
was.
like, and this judge, they flipped genders, so and made her much more soft spoken, older. It seems like they're trying to make her kind of just a normal judge, as opposed to the kind of funny judge from the movie.
Laren Little is his name in the movie and
Yeah,
the book.
and he's known as like Motherfucker Jones, or no, Motherfucker Jones was what was that, the Jason Bateman movie? Okay, yes.
And then even Raymond Horgan in the book. And Bill Camp is what, like you said, he's in his 60s at this point.
Oh no,
So
shit, that might okay, yeah.
So I don't know how faithful they're going to be to the book, and that's my problem with a lot of TV shows. It's not the fact that this is almost kind of like there's too much that's been changed. It's just the fact that the changes aren't interesting. If there's one word that I had to describe this show, it's that it's not as bad. It's boring. It's so boring. There's nothing that intrigues the viewer. They decide to add so much melodrama and so much that just doesn't matter. I mean, by the second episode, or it's really not even about Carolyn. Like Rusty has to come out and tell his kids that he's been cheating on his wife with Carolyn. But it just seems like there's nothing that's actually going on.
This is too serious, and I think normally with these law shows, like you were talking about, that David E. Kelley is so experienced with. I think that he didn't want to change the source material look like crazy, so he needed to keep the tone, which then tampered like with what he does best. I think they need like a flamboyant lawyer or someone who like has a lot of personality.
And that's kind of what Stern is. Like
Stern himself.
Stern isn't incredibly crazy, but he's very charismatic from what I remember with the novel. And
if Bill Camp just isn't.
I don't think he's meant to be.
Yeah,
I think Raymond Horgan.
I think you need the 61st Street lawyer also in Chicago, so they just didn't get him. Is the thing. Played by Courtney B. Vance, because that guy knew how to like get. I remember he showed a video. He does that thing where he like waits until everybody thinks that the court trial is leaning one way, and then he presents a piece of evidence that no one saw coming. Like we need a moment like that.
And I thought that Love and Death was kind of a good precursor of this, because at least when we get to the end of that series, David E. Kelley takes all the humor out of it. So it's not like he can't just do plain out drama, because in the finale of Love and Death, I really enjoyed it because it did get rid of kind of that comedic undertone and was just almost kind of horror from what they were showing in that trial. But here, it didn't work.
It's weird though, because like on paper it looks like it would. You've got this thriller that created a subgenre of legal thrillers for the rest of time. You add on David E. Kelley, who is the most legal minded guy, because the writer was a lawyer. David E. Kelley was a lawyer. You've got this amazing cast from Jake Gyllenhaal to Ruth Negga to like everyone else. And you would think it would work. It's not a direction issue. But the problem is, if you look at like even the Defending Jacob show from earlier, I feel like that was a super serious show that had Chris Evans, who was known mostly for doing like comedies or superhero movies and stuff. And he was able to pull off kind of like the concerned dad thing really well, because he was more of an innocent character than Rusty is.
Rusty, it's just like throughout the whole entire book, and I guess it was just the way that it was written, he very well could have done the murder. It is made very obvious.
So do you think the twist will at least be sufficient enough for you to feel like it was worth the time of investment to watch these 8 episodes? Because you do know there's a big twist coming.
Well, I mean, especially with Raymond Horgan now being the lawyer, I feel like they might even change up who the killer is from the novel. So that is a possibility. And I do like it when they show things from the novel, but it doesn't feel like it's doing the novel or even the film, which was very faithful. It's doing enough to really want me to keep watching. I'm going to have to give this series a 4.5 out of 10. And again, it has nothing to do with the cast. I thought that the acting is fine. They're just given nothing to work with, which is really disappointing, because I really wanted to like this series. Even when it started out different with Rusty getting the phone call about Carolyn's murder, I was like, okay, there's some promise here. But after a certain while, it was just hard to keep my attention on this.
I can see that. Hollywood Reporter agrees with you. New York Times agrees with you. Overall, it has like a 60 something on Metacritic. It has a 7.3 on IMDb. So like, yeah, it's not like an overwhelmingly loved series by any account. I do think there was one more point. One person we haven't talked about is Sarsgaard's performance, and he's been making the rounds.
He was Tommy Malto, right?
Yes, yeah, he's the main prosecutor guy.
I actually thought that he was probably the most like he was in the book. I thought that they gave him maybe the tiniest bit more heart in this TV show than he is in the book, because he's just in the book portrayed as a complete villain. He's even almost more a villain than Nico de la Guardia is. But here I thought that his performance was fine. Again, the acting isn't what I really have a problem.
And the last time I saw him, he was in Dope Sick playing like an FBI guy who was kind of doing a similar type of thing. Bill Camp from The Night Of. It seemed like the casting was also like on point.
They had everything. It's just the pacing of the story and the changes they decide to make are not interesting enough. That's what it comes down to.
All right. Well, then I think that's your assessment. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.